Welcome to Techtastic, the podcast that explores the cutting-edge world of technology and its impact on society. We live in an age of rapid technological advancements, where innovation is driving everything from the way we work to the way we communicate, travel, and even think. With each passing day, new breakthroughs and developments are revolutionizing the world around us, presenting exciting opportunities as well as complex challenges. In this podcast, we'll delve into the latest trends and topics in the tech industry, examining how emerging technologies are shaping the future of society. From artificial intelligence and robotics to the Internet of Things and quantum computing, we'll explore the big ideas and key players driving these transformations. Along the way, we'll hear from experts, thought leaders, and innovators in the field as we seek to understand the implications of these advancements for our lives, our communities, and our planet. Join us on this journey of discovery and exploration as we navigate the fascinating and ever-evolving world of technology. This is Techtastic.
And I'm your host, Christian Hammer. It's been an interesting week. I had Ben on. We actually did 2 recordings. I only released the first one yesterday. But as far as news goes, there's a couple things that are pretty apparent. One of them is that big tech is really doubling down in the space. And that's interesting for a very specific reason, at least to me. Big tech, for the most part, they have a lot of inertia, they have a lot of momentum, they have a lot of reasons why they don't want the next big disruption to come along. And who would it be disrupting? Well, them. And so they don't tend to jump into every hype wave. IBM did have a blockchain solution. They did try to do something in cloud. So they were trying to be in that, those 2 major innovation waves that came through. But I didn't see them fundamentally shift their business model, put a lot of real muscle behind it. They seemed almost like, well, let's play and see what happens. With Microsoft, they tend to be a pretty fast follow. When they see something gaining some traction in the market, they tend to, adapt to it, overcome it, and bring it to market. They've got Azure when it comes to cloud. I didn't see them do much in necessarily in the blockchain space. At least they don't stand out as a major player in that, or in a lot of the other Web3 space, but I'm sure they're active. But when it comes to AI, both of those parties got very deep. At least this week, it became apparent that both of them were jumping in pretty heavily. And the same thing is true with Google. Google's got a major announcement as part of their I/O event, their annual I/O conference that's coming up. Everybody's making the assumption that it's something in Google's generative AI plans, like there's something there. So the fact that the major tech companies that have got all this inertia behind them and all this advantage in the market, that they're really starting to either double down. In the case of IBM, they've got Watson X, which is their new build your AI model on our platform tool, a really amazing thing. They were early in AI. They had Watson for quite some time. That was an amazing product. It was an amazing solution that they came up with, but this is the first time they're really putting a lot behind bringing it to market, making it a marketable product. Microsoft's in deep. So when I see this, what I know is the case is it's proven now this is going to be a major disruptor. This is an industry-changing event, and even the big players are recognizing it and making wise moves to jump in. So for me, this is just a reinforcement of this is a major wave that's coming through. This is something that you need to be involved with, and as fast as possible, you need to understand it and get in before it's too late. And I know I make that sound like the gold rush. Don't miss out on the gold fields before all the good claims are taken. And in some ways, that's a little bit how I do think about it. You don't want to be the last one standing with nothing to dig when all the gold strikes have been made. But I don't ever personally. I love the metaphor that it's probably been overused. But don't be the person panning for gold. Be the one selling the picks and shovels. And I actually think that's where there's a lot of misses right now. And so IBM's made a really good move. I think that anybody else that's building a platform to enable others to really take advantage of what's going on in this particular hype cycles, really making the smart moves. So another thing was standards, ethics, and in particular how that's affected by, or how copyright is affected by it. And I'm going to have an individual on the show that I know pretty well. I'm on the board of directors of his company, MobiNet. And he actually was involved in a lawsuit around DRM that went all the way to the Supreme Court about a former company. And he's got some very strong opinions on this. And it's interesting because I couldn't find fault with what he was saying, but something about it bugged me, and I don't know how it gets resolved. And it really comes down to the idea of royalties and copyright. And so he's somebody I'm going to definitely have on to talk about that subject in depth, because it is important. And this particular wave of generative AI is going to really push the limits around intellectual property protection, copyright, etc., and enforceability and all that. And I've got some thoughts of my own about how we can solve that, but his contention is that we shouldn't be solving it, that there's no reason to be doing it, and how it's actually anti-democratic and anti-capitalist to be doing so. So should be a good conversation with him, but there is a lot more focus on that. I know that the executive branch of the US government had conversations with leading AI researchers this last week, and this subject did come up. And so I imagine that's why we're seeing a lot of OpenAI in particular putting out announcements saying what they're willing to do and what they're thinking about doing. And Europe, the EU, coming up with their first set of AI rules. There's a lot of thought and conversation going around about that topic right now. And so it's a very interesting time. If that's something that you're passionate about, make your voice heard. And then there are so many products that are coming out almost daily. I keep wanting to just read through all of them, but what I prefer to do is, if you have an AI startup, something, even if it's an enabling platform. In fact, in that particular case, I'd love to hear from you. But if you've got an AI product, if you're doing things with AI that are unique and distinct, I'd love to have you on, just like we had Vigami Ben Harris on the last episode. It's a good chance to get your opinions heard, voice what you're doing and why it's important and impactful, and tell your story. I love hearing the stories from other entrepreneurs. I'm a big passion around that. And like I said in that episode, every time I meet another entrepreneur, I find that it's just another member of my tribe. We have so much in common, and love to hear it. Let's see. I wanted to continue to talk more about kind of the frothiness that's happening in the market today too. Anytime a major change comes along, people get excited, and when there's a lot of possibility for making money, in that gold rush metaphor from before, if somebody struck gold, everybody wants to go digging for gold, and that's an exciting time to be involved in it. And one of the conversations I had with Ben yesterday, I actually had a follow-up conversation with somebody else, Chris, who I'll have on this in another day. He and I were discussing it, and he pointed out, and it was actually a very optimistic view of it, which I appreciated. My concern, whenever enabling technology comes out, people that maybe don't have any skill or story to tell, whatever, they start creating things, whether it was the invention of the camera, which allowed people that had no design skills to go out and just take pictures, and initially anybody could just go do it if they could afford it, but what it meant was that there was just a diffusion of really manure going out there. There was a bunch of horrible stuff being made. Horrible is probably overblown a little bit, but really bad content being created. And then whenever there's a new technology that comes out, you flood the world with just garbage. And I was concerned about that. And his point, which I really took to heart, and I loved it because it really turned that conversation around and gave me a different view on it, and I always appreciate those learning moments, was yes, but what that allows to happen is for the cream to rise to the top, which when we were talking about manure before and garbage, it was actually better to say the green sprouts come up through it, and they're found. They become emergent and apparent. And just like with any other distribution, there tends to be that bell curve. On the very one end, you've got the worst of the worst, and there's the messy middle where there's just a ton of stuff going on. And at the very, very top end of the curve, you've got the the great stuff that gets created, and it does get discovered. And he pointed over and over again where that occurred, and it was good to have that perspective on it, because I think that's what's going to happen in this space too. We've got this the early adopters and the early developers that were putting out stuff, and maybe it wasn't great, but it was amazing in its own right. And as more and more people get involved, just a lot of emergent stuff will occur, and some of it, the vast majority of it, will be garbage. It'll be useless tools, just to waste people's time, suboptimal, whatever. But what will occur in that is the great new things will come out of it. They'll emerge from it. Those green shoots will shoot up. And I loved thinking about it that way, because it also helps describe the entrepreneurial journey and what a lot of us experience when, if you're good at building a business, you're good at identifying a market, pulling together the team, building a product and really launching it and selling it, and you're just good at those skills, or you're good at building the team that's good at those skills, then your product's still going to rise to the top. As long as you've got enough capital, you can build the momentum. And that's always been the kind of VC thing, is execution plus capital equals, excessive profit. And it gave another way of framing that I actually really appreciated. So I wanted to share that with all of you and just put it out there that just because it's frothy and there's a lot of opportunity out there and there's lots of money to be made and all these wonderful potential things, know that most of what gets created is going to be terrible. So don't waste your investment dollars or your time. Really think it through and say, is there really a business here? Is there really a way to get to profitability on this? Is the team that can execute on it? Is there a customer with a pain point that this is solving for? Because if it doesn't have the good fundamentals, it's still not going to matter. I've heard on different VC podcasts talking about in the right conditions, in the right market, none of that actually matters, because even terrible things will still end up being profitable. Terribly run organizations with no real product can still be exceptionally profitable for them. And I don't know. I just fundamentally disagree with it. I think that you've got to have the fundamentals. So that's my warning to everybody out there that thinks that this is easy. You're just going to jump in and create some widget and make yourself exceptionally rich. Now, let me caveat what I just said there with one statement. You don't need a big team to do it, though. I think that a lot of the tools that are coming out very fast, that are really enabling tools for individuals to make them more efficient, whether they're developer tools or things related to the business side, maybe sales tools. There's some really good AI assistants in that front. Those make it possible for every individual member of the team to be 10 times as productive as they were 6 months ago. And it's that's going to allow you to have a small team to build something. It doesn't mean you still don't have to have the fundamentals right. You still got to have a sales, marketing, development plan, the business plan itself that makes sense, that has a way to make money. Otherwise, you're just wasting everybody's time. So I'm almost up on my time. I did want to say again, thank you for listening. I hope you subscribe to the podcast. If you want to be on the show, the best way to get a hold of me is hammer@techtastic.tech. And I hope to hear you next time. Thank you for listening.